All right, let's now get to the big story. And this morning we look at the biggest events that have happened this week. And we see how we try and make sense of them. Maria Alice is still here with us. She's a social justice advocate. Very cool and interesting title. But we've been joined by Ambassador Henry Maiga. He is Uganda's Deputy Head of Mission in China. Ni hao.
Ni hao ma.
Do you know what we're talking about? Or we lost you along the way? You need to learn some Chinese.
Because why?
Because why? Chinese, one, are the majority in this world, and two, they are the second biggest economy in the world. And people will tell you that very soon they might overtake the Americans and want to do business with them. The reasons are many. Ambassador will tell you during his free time. Ambassador, we're glad that you could join us.
Many thanks.
Of course, you know, lots of things have happened, but as of yesterday, we did get to lose this musician, Mose Radio. Did you know him, Ambassador? Had you listened to any of his music?
Yes, I have. Nahudat is one of the songs that was doing rounds in the country. And I think we really, what we need to appreciate is that death is a robber. Yeah, because in their really energetic age and really being productive in terms of social entertainment and all these kinds of things, the contribution was immense. And messages sometimes which build the country comes through music. And therefore, really my sympathies with the family for losing such an icon in music. Yeah.
All right. And well, Maria, I know we already talked about this, but perhaps some people are joining us. What would you say to his family? What do you remember this man for?
Well, I know that Mose was highly talented. I loved some of his music. There's this one particular collabo they did with the then Blue 3. Do you remember Blue 3?
I do.
Lillian Mbabazi.
Oh, yes, I do. I've grown old. My goodness.
You're so old. Yes. Right there with you. I really loved that particular song, especially the part where I sang. But I pray that God gives his family strength. It's a very trying time. Like I said earlier, you can never get used to death. You can't be like, I've lost very many people now, all of a sudden I'm immune to it. No, it's important that we also respect the family as they grieve. Because sometimes some people go out and put out interesting pictures and say interesting things, and some tabloids feel like it's their business to take pictures of who wore what at a particular at the service or something. So I would ask that we respect the family as they grieve and not trivialize the death of somebody.
All right, let's dig into the other stories that did happen this week. Away from that, man, of course, we are following up on that story as it does play out. We understand Berry is going to be Saturday. We are keeping tabs on that story. Let's see what else made it. I was saying earlier on that I like the mix that we are having this morning. When you have the young generation and the older generation, you know, the same table, so that the younger one can learn from the older one.
Middle-aged.
And the undecided ones.
But also hopefully along the way, you know, that the older generation can, you know, say, look, the young people have got a place at the table. So let's listen to them such that there gets to be a good transition. What am I saying even? Anyway, let's begin with Boda 2010. We did see the arrest of the patron of Boda 2010, Abdallah Kitata. And many looked at this man as, in a way, a right-hand man of General Kale Kaihura. Interesting things as they are. The week before that, Ambassador, Kale Kaihura was in Parliament and he was put to task to talk about this Abdallah Kitata man. And he said, look, this is one of those men that have helped me to fight crime over the times and so on. And then a short while later, the table is flipped and Kaihura has gone quiet. He's mute. We don't even know where he is. Are you as bothered as I am, Ambassador, that the police seems to be working with rogues, sometimes I like to call them? When, for example, police goes to quell, you know, protests and so on, you see these stick-wielding, built men who are beating people. And police is protecting them. Police is working with them. And then the following day, whoever is speaking for police says that we don't know who those people are. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? That bothers me. Does it bother you?
Well, of course, it's part of our now things that we are looking at as a country. That, of course, the police has had those gaps. That is an admission that I must make before viewers this morning, because I think 2010, yes, probably at the inception of it, people knew that definitely they were going to do a job, and there are definitely other good things that they've been doing. But during the process, you know, institutions get problems, groups get problems, organizations get problems along the way as they carry out their responsibilities. Now, 2010, Boda was supposed to work with the police in order to curb crime. That is for a fact. Now, along the way, if there are gaps that developed as a result,
under what
I think those are condemnable. Those are condemnable. You know, there's this aspect which is very important as far as security is concerned. Community policing. You have the police has to work with others. In my village where I stay, we work together with the police, and there has been we have had quite a number of meetings, and even Boda people have been involved. How do we curb? I live in a Chigowa in Ntinda, and by the time I settled there, about 10 years ago, we had a lot of crime and all these kinds of things, and we have worked together with the communities. The police has been working with us, and Boda have actually been involved in putting right things which had gone wrong. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that yes, Boda 2010 or 2010, Boda, whatever you want to call it, at the inception of it, I think the idea was a good one, that they work with the police. But if gaps developed along the way, that is a totally different matter to which we must respond as a country and then put right things. And therefore, if there are criminals amongst the Boda 2010, they must face the full force of the law. There's no doubt about that. But we also must appreciate the fact that, yes, we talk about security in this country. Where are we coming from as a country? There were times when actually the police, and I've lived long enough in this country, about 50 years, when the police actually behaved like a robber group, and they were running down people and all these kinds of things, arresting en masse, which is totally different at the moment, because let's assume that the police actually went on leave for 2 weeks. What would happen? I was not in the country when the traffic, I think, withdrew from the street, but of course I read online from the local newspapers from here how much chaos was caused in this city. So I think we must give places where the police has actually acted in as far as their responsibilities are concerned, together with Boda 2010 and others, like in my village, as I've said, we now probably something like in the region of 70% secure as a result of community policing, whether it is Boda, whether it is civilians and all these kinds of things. But of course, I must admit there are gaps, and the gaps have developed. Boda 2010, I think, was infiltrated by criminals, and those criminals must face the law.
Maria, some folks think we probably should cut police some slack. That, look, police should do community policing like Ambassador does say, because we have a police force of about 45,000 people. We have nearly 40 million Ugandans, so there's not enough policemen for every Ugandan. And so police should work with the people, and so reach out to people, community groups, circles maybe, Boda groups, I don't know, whatever the case might be. And along the way, people are people. Some of those might turn out to be bad, and maybe this is what we are seeing as a situation, but the inception should have been a good idea. Do you hear them when they say that?
I think, first of all, community policing is very important because, Joel, I know that every citizen has a responsibility to actually participate in crime prevention and curbing of criminals as well. But there's something that the ambassador said that made me smile. I've not lived in this country for 50 years, clearly, and I do not know the times when I do not know the times when the police had gone wrong. But for me, I think in this conversation of Boda 2010, we must cut the forces some slack, because you don't have control over everything, and I don't think they have like psychics or mind readers or trained psychologists who know that this is Joel, we've recruited him, he might turn out into a criminal or something, or he's a psychopath or something like that. But also for me, I think the question is, if indeed there was a problem, why wasn't the police at the forefront of solving this? And we see CMI jumping in to be the one to deal with all of this. Because
do you think that's a vote of no confidence?
I do not know. I don't want to say yes or no in this case, but for me the question would have been, if indeed police noticed that there was a problem within this particular gang, of which it has been reported from the time when they beat the children. Even Boda men had complained about it previously. You've seen the conflict they had with Century, and all of a sudden only the Century Boda people were in court. Now they're out on bail because I don't know, it's such a coincidence that when this group gets arrested, somehow these others are able to get bail when they couldn't get it previously. But I think most importantly is that, does the police force have the ability to deal with crime within its circles and the people it works closely with? For me, that's a question that needs to actually be answered right now.
Ambassador, the police force has a huge budget. The one of last year, if I have the figure right, was 487 billion Uganda shillings. That's a huge budget. But then we do not feel the police on ground. The police seems to be doing a lot more political work, and you had previously Kale Kayihura engaging these politicians, now you, then money and all these different things, and you thought, wait a minute. The police will know where Besigye is going to be next week and all these different things. They are investing quite a bit in that intelligence. But people are being murdered left, right, and center. We have seen the women in Wakiso and Entebbe being murdered. People are being robbed. And we do not feel the police on ground. Do these guys have their priorities right? Because I would think that these monies should be invested a lot more in that. You know, we have politicians do the politics. Police should not do politics. Police should come in when there's criminality involved, but criminality is happening and the police seems to be absent.
Joel, I'm not here to defend any gaps in the police. That one I said before at the beginning of this conversation. But what I want to add, let's look at the international statistics of what it's supposed to be. The proportion between the police and the population. Because the international standard is one police officer to between 500 people to 800. Now, you have, of course, put it right when you mentioned the number of policemen that we have in this country, about in the region of 40 to 45,000 police officers. Now, superimpose that to close to 40 million. What proportions does it give it to you? And that definitely does not exonerate those elements within the police who have actually committed crimes. And they should, first, as I said before, face the full force of the law. There's no doubt about that. But of course, I just wanted to mention something else, and she touched on it, that how much technology does this police have in order to even detect who is about, whether it is girl, whether it is a Maega Henry, or my good colleague here, who is about to commit a crime. How much capacity do we have? And of course, you have also mentioned about the police, who polices the police, because, I mean, they're bad elements. The president was very spot on some time back when he said that, look, Kayihura, go and clean up the police force, because there are elements that have infiltrated it. That is an admission from the biggest consumer of intelligence information in this country, we must admit. Because we cannot sit in this studio and claim to have the necessary credentials to assess what the political situation, I mean the security situation is in the country. There is that biggest consumer of intelligence information who is telling the IGP that yes, police is a very good force, we cannot disband it. But there are bad elements with it. And I'm happy that quite a couple of them were arrested recently. And they have been arraigned before the courts of law. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that yes, the police has got a very big budget. Yes, that's okay. But I don't think it is really the big budget also transforms the mindset of many elements within the police who have actually criminal kind of minds. You know, yes, you can have that big budget, but is it actually very big? And besides that one, does it answer the question as to whether those elements within the police who are actually committing these crimes, the problem is addressed as a result of having the big budget? Yes, the big budget is there's no doubt about it. And probably the situation would have been even much worse as a result of the police having a smaller budget and the numbers of the police being small and the lack of technology and all these kinds of things. Probably the situation is much better now. And I want to superimpose it on the situation, what it was. Probably the people in this country hate history. And I've said it before at the beginning of this conversation that, look, the situation was much dire before this police force actually was a little bit transformed from what it was to what it is. And the situation is, in my view, is now much better, because I've said that the police we had before this police, and I'm talking about the early 1980s and probably the 1970s, when you didn't know whether you'd live after the police arrested you. It was not possible at some point in time.
We have Nalufenya today.
Yes, of course, they are hardcore criminals, and those must be in the US. Talk about
so
Guantanamo.
Is it right for them to be tortured?
Talk
about, they go to Nalufenya, come back with wounded bodies?
Yes, I mean, those are just occupational, should I say, hazards of these kinds of things, and the police, of course.
How is torture an occupational hazard?
What I wanted to say, no.
But Ambassador,
I've lived in this, no, just a minute, because
occupational hazard is when you fall.
In the US, we have Guantanamo. I hope she has heard about it. Yeah, where hardcore criminals, including terrorists, are confined. And so if we have an Alufenya of sorts, so be it, we must have it, because hardcore criminals cannot be taken to Luzira. They must have a separate place where they are kept. And that's why the US has got to Guantanamo. Now, so that is now what I was coming to. Now, if some within the security forces have actually gone to the point of injuring these suspected criminals, that's a totally different thing, and it touches on discipline. And I thought that I talked about it at length, and those are the gaps which I admitted, and therefore those gaps have to be addressed. There's no doubt about it, because even security forces, just like we are, commit mishaps. Yeah, that is human. To error is human. And therefore, that touches on the discipline of our security forces, including the police. But Nalufenya is justified, in my view, just like Guantanamo is justified in the US and in quite a number of other countries where these hardcore criminals must be put away from communities.
All right. Maria, I know you want to comment on Nalufenya. You will. But as you do, let's bring in this whole Kirumira element into the picture, because some feel he's beginning to slowly but surely expose the police, lift the veil off it. He's saying pretty much what the president said, but as an insider, he seems to be touching on certain nerves and rattling many people. We saw him being arrested yesterday. Do we see the beginning of the cleanup of the police force? Do you believe that's what is happening, or is it another of there's going to be a media hype and we'll get back to business as usual?
Sorry. I'm still thinking about occupational hazard though, because I can't believe that torture can be codenamed occupational hazard. Occupational hazard is, Joel, if you fall off the steps, if a machine cuts you by mistake. But when you get a stick and beat up someone, how is that even an occupational hazard? But I will not dwell much on that, but it's very unfortunate that torture of human beings, but also the conversation of Guantanamo Bay. You need to understand that the USA will not do certain things on its own soil. They do it from somewhere else because the laws of the land will not allow certain things to happen on their own soil. So Nalufenya...
So Guantanamo is in Cuba?
Yes. Nalufenya, for me, confuses me because when the ambassador says hardcore criminals, we've seen FDC activists are collected and taken to Nalufenya. Someone needs to maybe help us describe what hardcore criminals are and what a normal activist or someone who's going to parliament to demonstrate is, because unless you're telling me that Besigye is a hardcore criminal and I don't know what crime he has committed. Anyway. But yes, we can't continuously blame the police for, we can't continuously, we must appreciate that certain things are different and the progress that they have made. But also, like the question that you've asked on Kirumira, I think I won't be so excited right now about the cleanup in police, because you know how they say the team played very good football, but they never scored a goal and they never won. So now we're still in that phase where we're counting ball possession, defense, what those things. So until we actually see something come out of this conversation, or come out of these particular actions that they're taking, I don't think it's time for us to be hyped. But also something I'd forgotten to mention earlier, the conversation of Boda 2010 and criminality in the police force was raised by Sebutinde very many years back. I think about 10 years in that review, in that report that she wrote, and said that if you don't deal with this situation now, it's going to become worse. And in case you've not, if you pay attention, it all happens within the traffic system. At first, you have the taxi people, now it has translated to the Boda. So it's not something new. It's not like it just happened this morning. We're just pretending to be shocked, but it has been there. Someone refused to deal with it. Now it's getting bigger, and a few people are going to fall off the line, but I don't know if they are going to actually solve the problem. But a few people will indeed fall off the line. You know how it works, Joel. They're going to present a few people, punish a few people, and then be on your way. All
right, let's move on to something else. Our time is running quickly. The strikes at universities seem to be unending. Gulu University lecturers are on strike. Makerere University evening lecturers, especially at the School of Law, Journalism, and a few others, were saying, look, we're not going to teach because you promised to incentivize us for teaching in the evening. That has not happened. I'm an evening student at the university, and I, together with my other colleagues, we pay money. So when we are told you cannot be taught because lecturers are not being paid, we are thinking, where is this our money going to exactly? Ambassador, what's the ultimate remedy to all of this? We have got good universities like Makerere, but slowly but surely it keeps dwindling, it keeps plummeting because of unresolved issues such as this, pay of lecturers.
No, of course I worked with the Makerere University for 25 years. That's quite a century. And I know the pangs and the pains that, of course, Makerere University went through. I'm associated with the university setting because I know how they've been functioning for a number of years. But I think these are, again, the kinds of things that an organization goes through in terms of its growth. Because I also did public administration and management. And I appreciate exceedingly well that an organization goes through stages in its growth. And I don't want to believe that Makerere University is what it was in the 1970s. It could have been better times. For instance, Makerere University began in 1922 as a college. And so it celebrated the other day its 70 years of age and all these kinds of things. But that growth definitely has to go through quite a number of steps, including strikes, including shutdowns, including all these kinds of things.
But the shutdowns are becoming so regular, they disrupt the year calendar.
I agree. But you see, in this country, there is a lot of freedom as well. And people choose, and rightly so, because in a democracy, you have to have these kinds of things that when people feel disaffected by a decision or by actually the lack of it or inactivity, they can withdraw their labor and all these kinds of things. But I don't want to suggest that that is the best way of handling university matters, because Makerere University, I think, has been suffering for a very long time. And as I told you, I worked there for 25 years, and I saw strikes by students, strikes by non-teaching staff, strikes by teaching staff, sometimes a strike of all the three bodies or publics, if you want. And I know that most of those things actually centered either on delayed payment or lack of payment, or in the case of students, poor food. But of course, all these things are a matter of conjecture, because what constitutes poor food, and what constitutes delayed payment, and what constitutes, I don't want to be so academic about those things, but I think public universities must act better, so that there is rationalization of the use of resources, so that people can be paid on time. If there is a problem in terms of shortage of teachers, and I don't believe that we have shortage of those teachers, because the teachers, but we need to rationalize the use of resources in public universities. I don't know what happens, of course, very well in private universities, but I know what happens actually in public universities, and they ought to act better in terms of utilization of resources. The resources must be rationalized in terms of use, and I think people should be paid on time, because that only makes sense to those who are in charge of our children, who have quite a number of children, a daughter who is doing university at the moment. But I can appreciate the fact that universities must act better in terms of use of resources, and people have to be paid on time. But why are they failing to pay on time? Because that is the other question, because we need to understand, we need to look at the figures. What's happening? Because on the one side, the university is saying it doesn't have resources, but then when people put down the tools, then they say that, okay, we have agreed to pay. So that's one thing which I may not understand very quickly. Because what are they now probably removing some resources from a vote and then making good the payment to the teachers? I need to understand that one much better, because university education must not be disrupted, just like primary and secondary education must not be disrupted as a result of shutdowns.
Maria, I don't know which university you went to. Did you go to Makerere? You
No,
did
I
not.
didn't.
You don't know what you missed. Anyway.
Please, don't.
How do you went to UCU?
No, I went to Chambogo University.
Chambogo University, which is also a government university.
Yes.
It has had its issues too, and so on.
Yes.
How do you think we should resolve these issues? Because nearly every year there is fear. Our lecturer is going to teach. Is the study calendar going to be disrupted every year? And then it gets
Yes.
sorted out temporarily, and then the following year, people are cagey again. What's the long-lasting solution, you think?
I think long-lasting solution. I think it's very important that we rethink how we support these universities, because I know that for a public university may not be able to charge, for example, the way UCU charges or the way Uganda Matters charges, because we're trying to have more people get to the university and actually stay there. Because now if you have a situation where the fees are hiked, because you've also had the conversations where the fees is increased, then the students strike, and then the administration is also saying, but we don't have enough money to cover up the gap. You also had the conversation where they're trying to move the halls of residence into private management, so that the university doesn't have to deal with those particular costs and find a way to make more money. So for me, I think the question is going to be, how much money does the state send there? Because there's also been the complaint that despite the increased cost of management, the monies allocated per government student has also not increased. They're still allocating the same amount of money for those particular students. So I think the state has to come in, and unfortunately we're a country where a lot of things aren't working. So everyone somewhere wants money, but also within the institution, you have to find a way to deal with the leakages, because if more money is lost into bad deals, corruption, and all of those things. So we have to find a way to create a system that actually works, a system that works. But I think we must pay. I think, one, you've seen the hashtag, pay Ugandans, build Ugandans. If you're not paying these people, how are they going to buy these products of Ugandans, and how is the economy going to grow? And you're still going to tax these very same people. So for me, we just need to find a way. And it's not just the universities. We're going to see more of this. If you've seen the way government plans on raising more money to meet the requirements of the budget in the framework paper, people who had been told that they were going to get a salary increment this financial year may not actually get that money, because government is trying to cut costs and have more money going to other projects. So you're going to, aside from now, you're also going to see more of these things happening. So a long-lasting solution requires that the policy makers and the people who are in charge of the monies that go around actually sit down and have an honest discussion about how monies are sent out and how they are used in these particular institutions.
Okay, my time is up. Let's wrap this up in 2 minutes by talking about what happened in Kenya. Raila Odinga saw himself in as the people's president. We saw a similar happening here in Uganda not long ago. Besigye is still facing charges in court. Some have said, look, well, this is folly, this is drama and comedy. But Ambassador, does it not speak of legitimacy of the sitting president being punched holes in? You know, that there can be a people who will say, okay, you are the substantive president, so to speak, we pay taxes to you, but because of, say, the way the election was managed or mismanaged, we are looking to this fellow for leadership, and we are going to swear him in, and there will be droves of people and that kind of thing. Does it not speak of, you know, legitimacy?
I was laughing when I saw the things, of course, both on social media and on television. But all I can say is that that's just hogwash, because you cannot confirm or dispute an election by doing an illegality. Of course, what Raila Odinga was doing was an illegal thing, and I was not surprised that quite a couple of, I think, his senior people in his party, whatever its name is, did not attend that thing because they could see the illegality in it. And of course, it is similar to what Kizza Besigye was trying to do here by going out to hide. Of course, he went into a building. He knew what he definitely was doing was illegal, and therefore it doesn't make sense to me for somebody who went for an election and lost it. They went to court. The court annulled the election. Then they carried out another round of elections, general elections, and he refused to take part in them. And then the other side wins. But of course, that's the general problem in Africa. In Africa, it is extremely difficult for people to accept defeat. Extremely difficult to accept defeat because people are defeated in an election. It also
seems to be extremely difficult for people to win legitimately without rigging, buying votes and so on.
That one, you're not going to find it. Even in the US, it's not there because people have been going to court. You remember,
why is the USA the standard?
Can I have my time? Because you remember when Al Gore stood with George Bush Jr., they went to court. But so you don't find this. There's not going to be uneven ground all over the world. It's not there. I've never seen it. In China, I don't want to speak about it because I'm a diplomat. But that even ground is not going to be there. And therefore, we must accept the verdict. You must do that trick. And it has happened before in these countries, especially in Africa, that actually it's possible for the opposition to win an election. How has it happened? Yeah, how has it happened? Because, I mean, people have decided to follow the law to the letter and make sure that they take part in elections. The opposition wins. It has been possible. In Kenya itself, the opposition has won before.
Okay.
How was it possible?
Ambassador calls it hogwash. What do you call it? This whole people's president thing, people swear themselves in and so on. What do you make of it?
Legitimacy and legality are a debate that has actually happened for quite an amount of time, because you see the question of running behind laws, and the law could be oppressive, does not always solve the problem of saying that, oh, because this is what the law states, but the apartheid policy in South Africa was in law, so it doesn't mean that a law is what's right. It could be legal, but it essentially is wrong and is illegitimate. So I think the people who came out to support Raila Odinga and his swearing in, they came out because they loved him. They came out because they believed in him. They came out because for them they thought that the election that had happened, whether legal and supported with being legal, supported by the courts and everything, yes, it happened. The books support it, but there's something else that we believe in. So when the Kenyan government saw that they couldn't stop the people using police and tear gas, they decided to shut down the media. But the people came, the people talked, said they expressed themselves and said, this is the person that we support, this is the person that we love. And so for me, I think that is the conversation that needs to happen. What does the ordinary person want, as opposed to hiding behind the scheme of laws that could actually be oppressive laws? So, and I'll end with this. So St. Augustine says that an unjust law in itself is a bad law. So if a law is unjust, I have the right as an individual to actually rebel against it. That is why civil disobedience was birthed.
Well, there you are. We are hoping for reforms. Hopefully the reforms will come through, because when the NRM wins, I think it will also be a good thing for them to win. And there's no questions about, now there was this, was the other, unfairness of the incumbency and so on. But when you win, everyone is shut up.
In any country, you're not going to find reforms that will convince people that actually now we have the necessary conditions that will. But
we can get closer,
that will perfect an
I think we should.
But Joel, and also
the Supreme Court gave 10 recommendations.
Because you don't want to tell me that I don't want you to tell me that we are where we were in 1962. There are quite a number of things that have happened as a result, progressively. And it will take us many years. Uganda has been having democracy for the last only 12 years. You remember 2005 referendum. But the US has had democracy for the last over 250 years. Over 2 centuries. Of course, we have to remember, because we have to get ourselves.
Well.
But still, there are issues.
Just because your neighbor beats your wife, his wife, does not make it okay for you to beat your wife.
Fortunately, I don't beat mine.
Okay.
Thank God. But just because the US gets it wrong,
what a way
does
to
not
end it.
legitimize, does not make it okay for Uganda to get it wrong. And that is the problem I actually have with a lot of people who come here and say that, just because something is going wrong in my neighbor's house means it's okay for it to go wrong.
All right, so let's pick the good from America and ignore the bad.
Which you have already done.
Hopefully they can pick the good from
Which
us.
you have already done.
All right, that's it for the big story. Thank you, Ambassador Henry Maega and Maria Alesi, for joining us this morning.
Yes.
That will do for the big story. Let's take a quick break. Coming up is Everyday Life. Thank you for coming through. Why should